A good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 2 of the AROC Racing Leagues GTV and 4C Championship for 2026. It is great to be back, folks, in our Giro D'Italia, our tour of Italy, as we head further into the year. The clocks will be moving very shortly, folks. There was still a brief glimpse of daylight at 7 PM this evening for myself here up north, so we're getting closer and closer to summer, folks. Isn't that a bit of fantastic news? But while we might not be enjoying the blistering summer temperatures that we're seeing here in Italy, our drivers certainly are at the moment. 25 degrees here in, well, the fictional Aviano, so it's great to be one of the Assetto Corsa staples here this evening. I know it's a fantastic track mod that the community absolutely adores, so great to be here this evening, as I say. 25 degrees ambient temperature and then 35 degrees on the tarmac, so it's going to be a pretty good one in terms of grip for the cars here this evening. And we are seeing some of these cars gripping up quite nicely. We've got another fast flowing circuit here, really, so there's a couple of slower sections, namely at the end of the first corner. Interesting to note, actually, at this corner, this circuit rather, is anti-clockwise, one of the more rare track layouts, particularly in the UK. Obviously, as we head Europe and international, it's a bit more common, but particularly in the world of club level karting, where I tend to spend a lot of my time, you spend most of your time on clockwise circuits, so it's great to see an anti-clockwise track making its way onto our screens as well. But 12.5 minutes there or thereabouts left in this session. Matt Daly currently leads us in his 4C. And this is something that we saw at Mugello last time out a fortnight ago, is that the 4C does have a very slight out-and-out overall advantage in terms of pace, but that GTV is a monster down the straight. So in another fast-flowing circuit like this, I do think we're in for a real treat. Speaking of the GTVs, it is John Cole who currently leads us in the GTV, running a 128.9, so getting achingly close, in fact, to the 4Cs in terms of overall pace. So that's really impressive stuff from John Cole there, to be within a tenth there or thereabouts of the car in P2, and then getting pretty close to the likes of Daly and Whitehead. I'm sure we're going to see those times changing as we head further into the session as well. I want to give I've already given a quick shout out to so many of our newcomers this season, but just a bit of a reminder, Rosie Oliver makes her return, as well as we don't have Anthony Marenghi here this evening. He's currently spending some time away, so hopefully we'll see him back soon. But I hope he's having a nice time away and a nice week off the AROC Racing Leagues action, perhaps. We haven't got any of our other newcomers other than Rob Whitney, who's making a return to the running this season, is here in the session as well. So we'll see if we get any more this evening. But still got a decently packed grid, even without. I've got 15 cars navigating their way around qualifying at the moment, and I'm sure we might pick up 1 or 2 more as we head further into the running. So that's great to see. I should also note as well, apologies folks if I'm not quite my energetic self as I have been over the past couple of rounds. Starting late last evening, actually, bit of a nasty illness, I think, in my world at the moment. So I'm a little bit under the weather. My throat's really quite sore, in fact. So I do apologise if there are the odd intermissions in the commentary action, or maybe I'm not quite rising to the occasion on the odd crescendo in terms of action. I'm just, unfortunately, a little bit under the weather. So very much looking forward to at least getting to see some racing action to cheer myself up. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As we go on board with John Cole, actually get a fantastic. I don't think we actually spent the time to look at an interior shot of the at Mugello in the GTV, so let's do that as we jump on board with John Cole as he heads to start the next lap of his stint. You get a fantastic look in here. You can see some of the commonality between the road car. It is a slightly low poly mod, I think. Actually, you know what? It's not on the interior. It looked distinctly more high poly. I think that's just maybe my bit of camera glitching. Either way, you can still see from the road car. You've got the 3 vents in the middle there. You've also got the instrument cluster binnacles, which are vaguely carried over, I guess you could say. But most importantly, from this interior shot, folks, you've got that sonorous Busso V6 singing its way around this Aviano circuit, which is fantastic stuff. You can just see the fantastic mountainous scenery. One of the big features of this track, as I've managed to dip away from it. There we go. Here's my 75. Yeah, this mountainous backdrop here at Aviano is spectacular, so it's well worth giving this track a couple of laps just for that even. and as well you can also see the dips in elevation, the cambers of the corners, and just how much bravery these corners do in fact demand from the drivers. It is very impressive stuff. And it is a fabulous circuit, so I'm really pleased to see that it has jumped onto one of our calendars. It looks like a real roller coaster. It reminds me in some ways with just the cambers and the pitches that you have to approach the corners with, and the speeds as well. In some ways I get a little bit of Nordschleife here or there. It might sound a bit odd, but that's just what I think of, and that's mainly because I've been lucky enough to do a couple of laps of the Nordschleife, and you get that kind of roller coaster feeling from inside the car. I'm going to be back there in 4 weeks, which means I will miss a round. So apologies, folks, I'm going to miss a week, but I will have many tales of sending my poor old BMW around the Nordschleife for an entire week with 5 days. And then I'm going to be doing the GP track as well, so I'm going to need to put some good brake pads on my car, I think. Either way, 8.5 minutes left to go. Matt Daly, perhaps unsurprisingly, currently leads the charge, but he is being challenged at the moment by the driver currently in P4, which might surprise you, but it's Colin Knief currently running along in P4. Has just posted purple sector 1 and gets the back end of the car out as he brings it round onto the straight. Comes across the line there to complete that second sector and loses a huge amount of time there as a result of that oversteer moment. What a shame, because that was looking to be a blistering lap, as Colin Knief, our championship leader, of course, is looking to try and challenge Matt Daly once again. A really impressive run out last time out at Mugello, of course, for Colin Knief. Sees him lead with 42 points to his name, about 5 or so ahead of Matt Daly, who's actually very close to Whitehead in terms of the point tally overall. But I'm sure we can delve more into the points as we head further into the racing this evening. So for now, we are going to have 8 minutes left on the clock. I'm going to take a quick break to give my sore throat a bit of a break. Apologies, but I'll be back in just a few minutes. Six minutes left to go in this session, and you just got a fantastic aerial shot from Alan Matthews' car. Great to see Alan Matthews with us once again, as that looked to be Miles Davis having a bit of an issue in the background there. He was indeed having a look. I think he was trying to see a way if he could. I think he had a bit of a pace delta over Alan Matthews and was looking to see if there's a way past. And in that upset the back end of the car. It is worth noting these GTVs, obviously, a lot of downforce on them, very tweaked in comparison to the road car, but I'm sure GTV owners will attest to. With that Busso V6, it's a bit of a heavy lump, and the weight balance is slightly more forward biased. So I'm sure that back end might be getting a little bit twitchy if you do upset it enough. I mean, as I've mentioned many times in the past, that's something that Mito Quattrofoglio owners can very much relate to. But 5 minutes left to go, and Daly still leads the charge. It looked pretty much unrivaled. I'd say pretty much unrivaled. John Cole's put a really impressive run in this GTV. I must say, it's great to see these two cars running toe-to-toe with each other in this series. I say that, and then Daly just goes a blistering 128.5 there, so finds 0.2 of a second to build up a bit of an advantage to John Cole and to give him just that extra safety margin to make sure that he takes that pole position away. Either way, so far, and we're not going to try and put a damper on this qualifying session by placing predictions now, but I am going to say it looks like we could be on for a 4C and GTV front row of the grid, which would be fantastic stuff for the racing action we are lined up for. I think these GTVs could really be a thorn in the side for some of these 4Cs here at Aviano, because just like Mugello's got plenty of opportunities for some wide open throttle action, so it'd be really interesting to see how these two cars do shape up. And it is worth noting, I mentioned it in Mugello as well, but if you are a driver of the GTV or you're supporting a driver of the GTV, don't worry, it's not as if, maybe the car's off the pace at the track here or there potentially. Don't worry, it's not as if they've got no chance at all of taking away any silverware. At the end of the season, as we progress through the season as well, crucially, we are going to be tossing up the points, looking at can we swap drivers in between the two cars if they'd like to do that, or even just dishing out points and rewards to drivers based on where they finished in their respective models. So we're basically running a concurrent championship here. The 4C is going to be fighting in its own little championship, as is the GTV. Obviously, on the results table, you're only going to see everyone combined into one big list, but I'll do my best to do some maths in the background. There's a bit of an unofficial dual championship going on there, so we can see who's been the best GTV driver, as well as the best 4C driver as well. So, 3 minutes left to go, and Daly is on a charge with that 128.3 that we just saw him complete, and then very nearly turn into 4C airlines there as he hopped over the curbs. Car did come back down to earth though in one piece, which is great to see. And 3 minutes left on the clock then, and all of a sudden, just when that pole was looking to be ever so provisional, it looks to be just that little bit more settled for Matt Daly at this stage of the session. Let's see what his rivals can do. Let's look at Rob Whitney, who's currently on, well, was on improvements on that last lap and did improve overall, but is now in the pits waiting for maybe one last ditch attempt. If not, it's still going to be 12th overall for Whitney, so that'll be the 5th fastest GTV in the session so far. Anyone else on an improvement at the moment? Doesn't look like it. I think we're in that quiet part of qualifying before drivers get the make or break it laps in for that one final attempt before the timer hits zero. We've actually found Millman with Matt and Daly for company, and unlike the 4C, unlike the Julia Championship, sorry, it's quite easy for me to tell the difference between Daly and Davis this time around, because yes, they may both be in bright yellow cars, but one's a GTV and one's a 4C. So you'd hope, folks, I am going to get that right. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if I do get it wrong. So, watch out for that one. 2 minutes left on the clock. Then I am going to have to take another quick break, so apologies. Might go and find a Strepsil. That's probably going to be a wise idea, but I will jump into the action before we see who takes pole in this one. We go on board with John Baker, currently 14th in this session, and opting for the medium tyres, which is something a lot of our drivers seem to be doing. We're seeing a really good mix, actually, of soft and medium running. We have added, it's crucial to note, the GTV has now had a hard tyre option added to it, so drivers who may be struggling for tyre life in the races on the medium can opt for that hard. Now, I do think there's a bit of a delta, so I think the hard is quite notably down on grip compared to the medium, but it does give you that reassurance that you can actually bring it home towards the end of the race without suffering the threat of punctures or just having a generally undrivable car, which is nice to see as we see John Baker very courteously yielding there for the 4C, hanging around the long sweeping left-hander there. Does eventually get it overtake. We don't want any major racing. It's always nice to see a bit of a tussle in qualifying, but we don't want any out-and-out battling because drivers are just trying to set their fastest laps, and looks like John was able to move out of the way there without compromising his own lap, which is great stuff to see. 10 minutes left on the clock, then we are still seeing some improved 10 minutes, 10 seconds rather. And there is Andrew Whitehead, who's just overtaken John Baker, currently in a 128.5 second lap as his best, so has found an improvement compared to that previous attempt and leapfrogs John Cole to take second overall. Daly's completed the session now. It's all Daly can do. 128.3. Cole also completing as Whitehead goes off, goes too wide, tries to carry too much speed into this corner in an attempt to take this pole position, and was looking set to do so, by the way. Had a blistering sector 1, but unfortunately has to abandon it at the end of this lap, which means that pretty much not many more cars left to complete the running here, as all of a sudden Knief down in 6th finds a very nice bit of time there, a nice chunk of time throughout that lap. No personal best sectors, just nice consistent running. Sees Knief now leapfrogging ahead of Whitehead and taking 2nd in the end, getting ever so close to Matt Daly, but just not quite close enough, unfortunately, for Colin. Meanwhile, it is going to be Andy Webb running in 7th at the moment, heading into the pit, as does Rosie Oliver and Alan Matthews. It brings an end to this qualifying session. So after qualifying is all said and done, your front row will be Matt Daly and Colin Knief, a traditional front row there, then followed by Andrew Whitehead and John Cole that lead GTV in this session. Then we have Andy Craker and Miles Davis taking 2nd out the GTVs and 3rd row on the grid, followed by Andy Webb and Rosie Oliver on the 4th row of the grid. So we'll see a nice 4C versus GTV battle there. Then we have Alan Matthews and Andrew Brammer on the 5th row, followed by Rob Whitney, John Baker, Paul Millman, Guy Swarbrick and Jack Hodson, who will be competing but hasn't posted a lap time so far in the qualifying session. That's your 15-car grid settled after qualifying then. We'll catch you in just a few minutes to get ready for race 1. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are on the grid and ready for race one here at Aviano. Looking forward to this one then, just over 40 seconds until lights out. It's Daly and Keith on the front row of the grid. It's a 4C trio, in fact, topping the order here. Whitehead in third, followed by John Cole, your lead 4C. Then we have Andy Craig, Miles Davis, Andy Webb, Rosie Oliver, Paul Middleman, Alan Matthews, Andy Brammer, Rob Whitney, John Baker, Guys Robick and Jack Hodson, your 15 cars competing in the running this evening. Then we head down to turn one, which is going to be a left-hander, quite a tight left-hander, actually followed by a small kink to the right, and then we head into the fast-flowing stuff. So looking forward to this. What a fantastic venue. It looks like a fabulous circuit to go racing at. And we're about to see that racing in just a moment. You can see the track gantry lighting up. We in fact have 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away and ready for race one. 25 minutes of action to go. Then it's a fantastic start for Colin Keneath, who ends up taking the race lead as the run down to turn one. But it's going to be Daly with the inside line here. Meanwhile, in that 4C, John Cole loses out to Andrew Whitehead, but is still in fourth overall. Craig is up into fifth by the looks of things. A fantastic race start for him. And it's not a fantastic start for Andy Webb and Miles Davis, who both have an off. Those two seem to be fairly familiar with each other out on track, and unfortunately they're familiar with the odd instance or two as they both head off together now. But meanwhile, Keneath takes the charge in this race, leads us on lap one, while Daly is struggling against Colin Keneath. Sorry, I was about to say Colin Keneath. Well, he is struggling against Colin Keneath, I guess, but John Cole is up into third now because Andrew Whitehead drops down into fourth. Andy Craig is under pressure from Paul Millman here, who's using that boost over V6 down the straight parts of this track to keep up with the tight and technical 4Cs. This is brilliant stuff from Paul Millman, putting pressure on Andy Craig here. Interesting to see, I should add, everyone going for the medium tyres this evening. That seems to be the tyre of choice. A whole uniform set of mediums for every car, 4C and GTV there as well. Daly takes charge of the race once again, and Keneath is off. Keneath is off and into the gravel. That is huge news, folks, after a fantastic qualifying. Very nearly saw him on pole with that late resurgence. Unfortunately, Keneath tumbles down to 9th on the race order here. In fact, make that 11th. Don't count Colin Keneath out, though. That is for certain. He's certainly not out of the running here. He's got 23 minutes still to make up a few places. I know we're going to be in for a great Colin Keneath recovery drive if we stay tuned. But Cole, meanwhile, has actually been able to take the race lead in all of the goings on there. John Cole is just able to use that straight line performance of that GTV and a bit of bravery as well. That traditional John Cole bravery that we do know well sees him taking the race lead. Now Matt Daly's going to be the driver to try and reverse that, as these two are now beginning to break away from Andy Craig already. It's Whitehead in fourth. It seems to be a comfortable position for Andrew in this race so far. He hasn't really closed up on Andy Craig, who seems to have leapfrogged him in this one. But I think Andrew should have the measure of Paul Millman behind for the time being, so it'll be interesting to see how this race does develop. I am really impressed. I know I discussed it at great length in Mugello, but I do love just the variety that the 4C and the GTVs running at the same time is throwing into the mix here in this racing. It's fantastic stuff to see people who maybe wouldn't be protagonists in these races in seasons of past time now fancying their chances of going for some of the race leaders here, and we're certainly seeing a fight for the race lead in front of us, aren't we, folks? Because Cole is just about clinging on to the race leader. You can see the extra performance of the 4C through the corners is balanced perfectly by the straight line now of the GTV V6 there as it begins to romp away down the straights before once again Daly is able to set himself up nicely onto the start-finish straight this time around. It's a 29.2 for Cole, 29.5 for Daly there as we start what will now be one of the next laps of this race, as Cole looks to be fairly compromised there, heading through the kinked right-hander there that follows turn one. Apologies, we're not going to be relying on traditional corner names here. It is, of course, not a traditional circuit. And Cole nearly loses out the race lead, but is able to take it back in the end. This is fantastic stuff. I love the flag wavers there, by the way. I don't know if you can see that. We'll try and get another glimpse of that. The flag wavers are normal-sized humans with the world's largest flags. That is quite interesting, because that I wouldn't be able to carry that. I don't think anyone would be able to lift and wave that flag around. That's just my important observation, while there is much more interesting racing going on, of course. Speaking of, we can see that Davis has found a way past Alan Matthews, who hasn't had the best start to life in the 4C, it seems. Obviously, was in the jury with us last week, and would be hoping for more points, I am sure, but hasn't quite happened just yet. But still, we have 20 minutes in this race to go, and Jack Hodson is making positions after no qualifying time set, and it's 13th on the road so far for Jack Hodson. Let's see who else we can see there. Millman and Rosie Oliver are looking fairly close together at the moment. Rosie had a great time out in the Julias last week, and I think wouldn't be offended but to say was definitely a mid-pack action driver with glimpses of fantastic results here or there in seasons gone by. But this time out, which seems to be kicking off with a bit of a vigor, a bit of enthusiasm. Great to see Rosie Oliver doing so well in the Julias and looking to be replicating that in the GTVs as well. Currently 6th on the road, is about half a second down on Paul Millman, as these two are looking pretty set to be in for a top 5 finish here if they play the cards right. Meanwhile, Colin Keneath and Guy Swarbrick have made a bit of contact together. Guy's currently running in 8th, but might just turn that into 9th as Rob Whitney sees an opportunity down the inside and absolutely goes for it. John Baker might be looking to do the same thing, but does have Miles Davis as company as well. Keneath, meanwhile, is on that recovery drive that I mentioned, is currently up into 7th on the road as Guy Swarbrick loses out a couple more positions in the end there. We can see John Baker is looking to go around the outside as Davis is up into 9th as well. It's all happening in the midfield here as Oliver is putting pressure on Paul Millman, is just making their presence known. Paul Millman can't rest easy and can't just settle into a rhythm because he's going to have to go on the defence sooner rather than later, because here is Rosie Oliver now, closes up to about 0.3 of a second. But losing out a little bit through the straights, it must be said. I think maybe a difference in setup potentially between these two cars. Let's just see. Let's see if we can get a bit of data from the gear indicators, a bit of data from the rev gauges as well. See what's going on with these cars. As Alan Matthews has further issues and tumbles down to 14th, unfortunately. Meanwhile, Rosie Oliver does in fact get past Paul Millman with a great opportunistic move down the inside there. Rosie Oliver on for a top 5 finish. Now the second GTV overall. These two scrapping in that podium position for the GTVs. That is a very important accolade. Will mean a lot for the results later on in the season, of course. And this is a great turnout for these drivers as Andrew Whitehead has issues early on in the lap and ends up tumbling down into 6th position, losing out to those two GTVs, and in fact might be under pressure from Colin Keneath very shortly indeed, as Colin's got a great turn of momentum behind him and is now putting that pressure on. There's a bit more of a chrome effect going on Keneath's car actually compared to what it used to be. There, and I've just seen a comment from Anthony Merengue here on one of my screens, and I must say I'm incredibly jealous. We'll try and look at that in a moment as Paul Millman is fighting back for this 4th position on the road, and as it now has become a 4th position, of course, with 80 minutes left on the clock. These two GTVs fighting tooth and nail. This is fantastic stuff, as Keneath, meanwhile, is going to be fighting tooth and nail as it's 2 4Cs there, going for 6th overall. Brilliant stuff as Andrew Whitehead takes back that 6th position then. Millman, meanwhile, looking like a bit of understeer potentially creeping in for the front-wheel drive 4C. We'll see if that is just going to be a bit of a trait of this car as we head further into the race. But meanwhile, I think Miles Davis and Guy Swarbrick have had a bit of a coming together. They might have just done theirs. We are going to get another 3-car battle for the midfield, which is great to see. Miles Davis in 10th gets ahead of John Baker and now sets his sights on Guy Swarbrick. But that is providing that John Baker doesn't have a great run out the corner there and is going to try and claw it back, which he does so. A bit of a drag race there, but he does go too deep into the corner. Can he keep it on the tarmac? He can. Brilliant stuff from John Baker there, who just about manages to keep the momentum up without flying off into the gravel. Fantastic stuff there from John Baker. Looks to be a little bit more settled at the moment between Millman and Oliver. I don't think that's over just yet, though. While all this is going on, by the way, your top two have been no more than half a second apart, which is brilliant news for the championship as a whole, I think, where we've got such exciting action that we can't even think to focus on the half a second battle for the lead that's going on out in the front, because there's so much else going on elsewhere. That gap is shrinking down, so we might need to turn to it at some point as Guy Swarbrick does tumble down to 11th, loses out a little bit there, clips the grasp by the looks of it, as it's Baker in 10th. Now we see Miles Davis in 8th as Rob Whitney seems to have had a few issues, and it's now going to be a 4-car battle potentially here for P8 as it turns into overall. Whitney loses out, but is going to go side by side with Baker, tumbles in behind Baker then as Baker takes 9th overall. Swarbrick might be the nearest rival, nearest competition to Rob Whitney as we head further into this race. But I tell you who will be some near competition. It's going to be Daly versus Cole as we head towards the end of the lap now. The 4C looks a little bit unsettled. The GTV looks fairly composed, using that front-wheel drive native to its advantage as he builds that momentum, picks up that speed. That V6 sings, and we start the next lap. But already we can see that 4C just seems to be a little bit more composed and a little bit more eager to turn in comparison to that GTV heading into turn 1 there. John had to really wrestle that car into that first corner, and it seems to be very much on the defence here. This isn't the widest course in the world. There are some certainly wide elements, like we are seeing there, and it's certainly wider than some British tracks and a lot of Mugello as well. But the thing is with the GTV, it's not the out-and-out race car that the 4C is. I think that much is clear. But it is such a dominant force in a straight line. It is a really tricky bugger to be behind, I must be honest, to be attacking. It's such a tricky car to try and attack, because no matter what you do, no matter what strengths you have elsewhere on the track, there's no ignoring that Busso V6, and it will just claw back any advantage you build up. It is brilliant to see these two cars fighting. I thoroughly enjoy it, in case I haven't made that clear already. Meanwhile, Knief's up into 6th, is ahead of Rob. That's Andrew Whitehead is ahead of, actually, as Andrew has further issues in this race. And Knief puts the pressure on Paul Millman now to be a bit of a party stopper for the two GTVs. Have had a great run in the top 5, as Paul Millman did very well to catch that one there, didn't he, folks? That looked like it was going to be a bit of a visit to the gravel, but somehow Paul Millman collected it. The good old front-wheel drive of just put your foot down and hope that the car grabs itself some grip seemed to work quite nicely there, as Millman jumps down into 6th. And this could be a real opportunity for Rosie Oliver, in fact, as she looks to improve her lead over Paul Millman potentially. All that needs to happen here is that Knief is not able to quite close up to Oliver as quickly as he would like to do, and in fact, Paul Millman might be looking to battle with Knief. Either way, if she can use Knief to try and build up a bit of a gap here, as Paul Millman is doing, because Paul Millman's fighting this position now and fighting for it well. Again, these two cars seem to be such a good match out on track. That might just work very well for Rosie. Apologies there. As I mentioned in qualifying, and some of you might not have heard, I'm rather under the weather this evening, and it's getting worse. It's been rather sudden onset. It started last evening, as I said, and then throughout the day I've just kind of got home, and it's just, my body's just kind of given up. So apologies if I'm not quite my usual energetic self. Apologies if the voice kind of gives up every now and again. Throat is very sore. I'll do my best. Halfway into this race we are now. And I mentioned it a good few minutes ago now, but we've had such good action. We've got plenty of it still at the front end of the field, as well as Cole's on the defence here and setting himself up for a really good result, providing he can keep this 4C at bay as they get ready to start the next lap of the race once more. Mr. Anthony Merengue, rookie to the season, to our running this season, of course, is not present this evening, unfortunately, because he's currently watching from a bar in Morocco. And doesn't that just sound bliss? I'm very envious of you, Anthony. Hope you're having a lovely time. Can't wait to hear all about it, because that sounds fantastic. What better? You're sat in a bar, you're in Morocco, and you're watching some Alfa Romeos go for some racing. That's, I mean, does it really get any better than that? I'm not sure it does. Very envious, and hopefully having a lovely time, as I say, as I'm sure Cole is wishing for an equally blissful time at the moment. I'm not sure he's getting that, because there is a 4C keeping him busy, shall we say, as we approach or in fact past the halfway distance in this race now, as the time is about to hit 12 minutes on the clock. And so far he's done a very good job of defending, has John Cole, but sooner rather than later I'm sure that Daly's going to wish for a way past. Let's see those. Oliver and Knief are the closest cars just behind those as well. Knief eventually finds a way past Millman and now finds it past Oliver as well. I don't think Rosie's going to fight for it all that much, which is the sensible option in her position. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. Her battle realistically is with Paul Millman. The more she slows herself down trying to battle with Colin Knief, the more that Paul Millman's going to be able to cling himself back towards that action there. So that is a smart move from Rosie. She can now settle into a nice rhythm and just cruise on home with a nice 4-second advantage or 3-second advantage to Millman behind. Someone who doesn't have quite the advantage is going to be John Cole and Matt Daly, because I don't know if you've seen this, folks, but here's Andy Craker on the scene. The fantastically liveried red, white and blue 4C on your screens there, folks, has been very quietly posting those laps in and posting them in rather well, it must be said. Is the quickest car out on track out of anyone. A 129.0 is his best lap overall. And we see this sometimes from third place on the road, is that you've got no major challenge from behind, and the front two are busy fighting themselves as they are at the moment. We can see Daly having a look around the outside, but nothing that he can do just yet. And that means that Andy's just poised to close on up to those front through, reel them in, and get himself in the fight there as well. What he's probably waiting for is these two to slow themselves down significantly enough, and that might even be with a small collision here or there potentially, to just be able to just swoop on past and take a comfortable race lead. That's not what we want to see, but it might be what Andy's potentially thinking of seeing in that car that's currently in third. So I think we're in for a great shout, a great battle here as we head into the final 10 minutes of race 1. Don't go anywhere though, folks, of course, because we do have race 2, our reverse grid action, coming up in a few minutes, which should mean that anyone who might have lost a few opportunities here in race 1 is going to have another chance to fight for it in race 2 as well. But what a fight we're seeing here between John Cole and Matt Daly. John Cole, hats off to you, sir, for clinging that one back. I think my sore throat's going to be getting worse after this one, folks, because this is brilliant stuff. I think Matt Daly slightly misjudged the braking there, just ever so slightly clipped, and it was ever so slight, clipped for the GTV in front of him. But John Cole, hats off to you, as I say, for clawing that one back, just welded his foot in it, bit of oppo lock, caught the car, got it pointing in the right direction, didn't lose too much time, all things considered. Andy Craker's now the driver in second, as Matt Daly did lose some time in that, and it's now going to be Craker versus Cole, so that might be an even more difficult challenge potentially, because as I mentioned, that 4C of Mr. Andy Craker has some fantastic pace underneath it. Has a few tenths advantage over Matt Daly so far in this race, so might be seeing a two-pronged 4C attack now on John Cole potentially as one goes through. Will Matt Daly follow as well? They said, will Matt Daly follow through there? So apologies, Matt. I'm hoping that you won't. The racing's intense, but it's probably not that bad. Either way, 9 minutes left to go, and the two 4Cs do find their way past in the end. Well fought though, John Cole, I must say. Fantastic battling for 15 minutes, over 50 minutes in fact, in this race so far. In the end, he did have to relent, but he's still on for some decent points here. The 4Cs, as we do know, do have the slight edge in terms of cornering ability, but let's see what the GTVs can do as we head further into this race. The 4Cs aren't done fighting though, as we see side by side go Daly and Craker. Daly probably says, thank you very much, you've done all the dirty work for me, now it's time for me to take back my race lead, Andy. Let's see if that does happen. We head on to that start-finish straight, 8 minutes left on the clock, and Daly's going to benefit from a tiny bit of a slipstream here, but will it be enough to make enough of a difference into turn 1? It doesn't look like it will be this time around. We'll have to see if he gets an opportunity later on. Rob Whitney's currently running in 11th, I should add, under pressure potentially from Andy Webb, who had that unfortunate early race instance right on lap 1 it was. So he's, I imagine, just looking to set his sights on race 2, the reverse grid action coming up in a few minutes' time. But let's go back to the front end of the pack where all the action is currently happening. Daly has a look down the inside here, has a brief sniff down the inside. Nothing that he can do from there, though, as actually Rob Whitney and Andy Webb have a collision, and Rob Whitney retires from the race, unfortunately. That is a shame to see. Hopefully he's back for the reverse grid action. We can see more of him later on. But Webb continues on up into 11th then, nearly in the point scoring positions. Let's see if he can take that elusive point in this race. He scored 2 so far this season. This season not quite kicking off the way that Historics did for him last time out. And Guys Robert does actually rejoin the action, which is great to see, as Alan Matthews has some issues of his own. He might not see this now, actually. Hopefully he does join back in, so he will watch the stream back later on. But I was going to wish Alan Matthews a belated happy birthday for this week. But unfortunately, maybe his birthday fortune's not quite continuing on into the racing this evening. But 7 minutes left on the clock. We head round onto the start-finish straight once more. We see that Craig still leads us by about half a second now, as Daly is there or thereabouts, based on which corner we're at. But I think it's going to be a last-minute lunge or a late charge if we are going to see a change for the lead of this race in the final stages of the racing as well. And I do want to give a shout out once again to Anthony Merengue, who says, if I could have got my helmet in my suitcase, I would have joined in. I like your thinking there. I got this fantastic image, Anthony, that you do wear the helmet in the sim. Might be missing a couple of parts to take part in the action, unless you got your Xbox 360 controller and a laptop with you. I mean, maybe forgo the 360 controller. I'm sure keyboard and mouse. I've seen I've seen worse done before. Was that what I was? Yeah, I was on keyboard and mouse. Those of you who were in the test session for the server for this series, in fact, will probably quite well remember the run into Mugello, where we were doing a few laps and then thought we'd do a test race start to test the server to its limits, where I was in the 75 because my 4C wasn't loading in, and obviously the 75 is my camera car, where I got quite used to having a bit of a battle with a couple of GTVs. We're having a bit of great fun, actually, it must be said. And then it came to stopping on the grid in front of everyone, where the 75's milk bottle top brake discs became very much known, where the car proceeded to not stop and barrel through the rest of the field, and it was quite a sight to behold. And that was all done on keyboard, so maybe keyboard not the best race strategy, although ideal if you are in a bar in Morocco. Although maybe there are some other elements of a bar in Morocco that might not make battling in the AROC Racing Leagues ideal. Shall we say? We don't encourage that sort of thing. We don't encourage drink racing. I mean, maybe it remove your nerves? I don't know. Either way, 5 minutes left on the clock. You can try these things in sim racing, can't you? And I tell you what, Matt Daly's going to try. He's going to try finding a way past Andy Craker. Apologies we missed that one, folks, but he has found a way past there in the end. 8/10 of a second is now his margin. Andy Craker seeming to potentially lose just a little bit of pace here late on into the race. The tyres might have a tiny bit of life left in them at this point, but crucially, the fuel tanks will be getting rather light. And what we're seeing now is Craker's managed to find a 28.9 in his car, but Daly's found a 28.7. So we will see some really impressive times. Apologies, folks. I am going to have to take a quick Strepsil break. I'm not going to take another Strepsil. That'll be overdosing on the Strepsils, but I'll be back in just a few minutes as we get ready to bring an end to what has already been an action-packed race one. Two minutes left on the clock in this one, then Daly extends his lead on Andy Craker. Meanwhile, John Cole under threat from Colin Knief here, which is a great resurgence from Colin Knief. I said do not count him out in this one. Great to see that Alan Matthews is back on track, so hopefully he will have seen my happy birthday message, and more importantly will be setting himself up nicely for the reverse grid action coming up in a few minutes time. But we get a great shot from Matthews' car actually of Knief trying to find a way past John Cole, but not quite able to do so just yet. It is also nice to see, I must say, a slight variation on Alan Matthews' traditional livery. He's gone for quite a bit more green compared to the white than usual, which is lovely to see. I like the matte effect on it as well. I'm not usually a fan of matte race cars, but you know what? I do think it sort of works in that shade of rather pastel lime green. So that is nice to see. Got a big variation in some of the paint finishes. Obviously, Colin, just in front, has got quite the opposite to the matte effect car there with that chrome livery, which is currently barreling through the Italian countryside there. Not ideal for Colin Knief. He's back out on track. I'm going to stop talking like I'm looking at a dual paint colour chart and instead focus on what's going on with the racing. Obviously, didn't lose out any positions to Matthews there because Matthews is a few laps down, but Knief might have just lost his chance at a podium overall in this one. John Cole is going to take GTV race victory as it stands and obviously be on the podium overall in the race. We do have just 50 seconds left in the clock. I should add that Rosie Oliver, shout out to Rosie, has been doing a fantastic job in the GTV running there as well. His second overall out of the front wheel drive machines will take away a nice haul of points. I should add, it won't take away a podium's worth of points in the official standings that you can see on aroc2.emperorservers.com/live-timing. Did you get all that? I'll probably start posting these into the chart as I go along. I might do that for race 2, but won't quite take away the podium scoring points officially, but as I say, I've mentioned in the past, we're going to try and do the maths as we head further into the season, of course, so still plenty to fight for in the GTVs, even if they're not there with the 4Cs. 5 seconds left on the clock then. Where is Matt Daly? Matt Daly is currently towards the latter half of this lap, which means that we are, in fact, on the penultimate lap of this race. Just waiting for official confirmation there. And in a few moments' time, we will be starting the final lap of this race with no major challenge for Daly, which a very different picture to how it looked even 10 minutes ago. Really impressive stuff to see Daly's recovery. He did obviously take pole in this qualifying session. Really impressive run for Daly there. Got very close to Cole and Knief in the standings in championship in qualifying, but overall it will be Daly who comes out on top in not only qualifying but race 1 as it stands at the moment. That's not to say that there might be an issue on the final lap. We have certainly seen that in the past, but hopefully for Daly's sake we don't see that. I've talked at length as well about how good the Busso V6 sounds, but let's give a shout out as well to the TBI engine that's in the 4C. A fantastic lump, obviously. Actually, you know, has been in production for a fair amount of time as the 1750 TBI, which features in the 4C road car, based on obviously the older engine architecture. Even what a lump it is! It is a fantastic power plant. I do love the Italian turbo 4s. Obviously, got a bit of an affliction for the 1.4 multi-air, which again, no multi-air failures to my car so far, so doing well at 105,000 miles. And obviously these cars make a great noise as well. And I'm sure Matt Daly is appreciating that engine and the noise that it makes as it drives him home to victory here in this first race of the evening. We've got more racing action coming up next, and that all becomes hotly contested once more. But for now, we will be bringing an end to this first race here at Aviano. It has certainly delivered some fantastic racing action. Just a couple more corners to negotiate. In fact, make that one more big corner to negotiate before Matt Daly will bring it round onto the start-finish straight and take race 1 of victory. Congratulations, Matt Daly. A fantastic drive there. Certainly not plain sailing, but enjoyable to watch, certainly that is for sure. Andy Craker then brings it home in P2. What a quietly really confident driver that has been for Andy Craker overall. And then in the end, a recovery drive for Colin Knief in his 4C. Sees him rounding out the podium in this one. He does eventually get ahead of John Cole as it stands, but John Cole will take victory in the 4C standings as he immediately dives into the pits. Andrew Whitehead does the same as well. He just narrowly misses out on a podium overall in this one. Top 5 finish though, at least he can take that away. And second driver to be bringing it home on the GTV podium will be Rosie Oliver then, as she brings it home in 6th on the road, but as I say, second out of the GTVs in this race. I think I've said 4Cs when I meant GTVs quite a lot this evening, so apologies for that one. I'll blame it on my illness, so apologies for that one. Miles Davis then brings it home to round out the GTV podium, 7th on the road, and then we have Andy Webb who brings it home 8th in the end, which is a really good, strong result given how this race started. Do we have any daily victory donuts? No, we don't. I don't think we're going to get any till race 2, which is unsurprising, but nice to see that they are bringing the 2 cars home in formation there. That is a nice flourish for a finish there, as we have Milburn bringing it home in 9th, followed by Jack Hodson. Did in the end score a point in this one, which is a great start to the weekend given that there was no qualifying time set. Currently 4th in the standings is Jack, so he'll be hoping for a few more points. Bye-bye to Anthony Berengi, who does have to dip away and says he'll be back in 2 weeks. So have a lovely rest of your trip, Anthony, and great to see you back in the racing action soon enough. John Baker brings home 11th, and then we have Andrew Brammer in 12th, followed by Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews and Guy Swarbrick, who are classified 13th, 14th and 15th respectively. That brings an end then to race 1. We'll catch you in a few minutes as we get ready for race 2. and welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are then on the grid and ready for race 2. Going to be an interesting one. Reverse grid action obviously comes into effect here. It's Miles Davis and Rosie Oliver on the front row of the grid, followed by Rob Whitney and John Cole. Apologies, no, it's Andrew Whitehead and John Cole. Then we have Colin Knief, Andy Craker, and then Matt Daly. That's your reverse top 7. Then we have Andy Webb, Paul Millman, Jack Hodson, John Baker, Andrew Brammer. Then we have Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews. 14 cars completing in this one. There's going to be a really interesting front row battle that takes place in this reverse grid action. Obviously, we know these GTVs, once they're out in front, can defend for a really long time, and it's a GTV front row followed by a couple of 4Cs, but more GTVs in the mix there. So we have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away. Andrew Whitehead, is that a potential false start? I think it could well be, because that was blistering off the line. He's doing the right thing, though. Once it's happened. You just carry on, complete your lap as quickly as possible in the hopes that your penalty is negated as much as possible, if that makes sense. But it certainly won't be the case for Andrew Whitehead, whose race start goes from bad to worse. He'll be doing that from last on the road. What a terrible shame that his race is pretty much over as soon as it started. Knief is then up into second, Davis in third. Then we have Davis in second, John Cole in third, and Rosie Oliver starting this one in fourth as well. We can see another car in the background there just having a bit of an issue. Is that Andy Webb? I think it is. Yes, it is Andy Webb, who just clipped the gravel there. Brings it back onto the track, but not the way that I am sure he wanted to start this race. Meanwhile, we're going to have Rob Whitney up into 8th on the road under pressure from Matt Daly here. Let's see what he can do in that GTV, which has immense straight line performance. He's going to have to try and hang it round the outside if he fancies his chances at taking back 8th. In the end, though, Daly does complete the move. Actually, now Daly setting his sights on 7th. John Baker is going to be the next driver under attack here, as the inside line is opened up by John for Matt there, who does in the end work his way on through, and up into 7th goes Matt Daly. So a great recovery drive here for a less than ideal start. Knief as well, as I say. What a drive this has been for him so far, really making amends for race 1. Miles Davis under pressure from John Cole. It's going to be GTV on GTV action as down the inside goes John Cole. Says thank you very much. Nearly finds himself barreling over the curb, but manages to avoid it. Might cost himself some momentum potentially, as Miles Davis is going to try and cling it back, heading around the long sweeping left-hander here. There is an opportunity, there is a GTV-sized gap for Miles Davis to occupy, but well defended by John Cole there in the end for John Cole to remain in 2nd place overall. Miles Davis has to settle for 3rd for the time being, and actually these two are costing themselves a little bit of time. Rosie Oliver's back on the scene and is in for, at the moment, a GTV podium, but fancies a little bit more than that. I suspect he's going to go for 2nd, maybe 1st as well. Really good set of results so far for so many of these drivers. Apologies folks, my throat really is not happy with me this evening, so it appears. We do have 22.5 minutes left on the clock, and it is so far a really intriguing race that is developing before us, isn't it folks? Because fastest car out on track at the moment, that is Matt Daly, who's currently in 7th on the road. Andy Craig is putting pressure on Paul Millman, has looked down the inside, there's big contact. I don't think Paul Millman was expecting to see Andy Craig there, but Andy Craig had that gap, he just went for it, and a bit of a racing incident on that one, unfortunately, I suspect, as yeah, Paul Millman just, I don't think quite was expecting the 4C to be there, even though obviously we do know that 4C is fantastic heading into the corners there. So what a shame for Paul Millman. That puts a bit of a damper on his race as he heads further into the racing action, as Andrew Whitehead is on a recovery drive at the moment. He's currently in 14th, hasn't quite closed up to the back end of the pack just yet. Daly, meanwhile, is up into 5th, gets ahead of Andy Craig. These two were enjoying a battle last time out, of course, in race 1. It was for P1, this time it's for P5, but I'm sure maybe they'll be thinking if we can try and work together and then we can settle our difference, we can settle the score once we're higher up and in the higher point scoring positions. That won't be the case this time around. They're going to have to try and fight for it later on into proceedings. As meanwhile, Rob Whitney has just been overtaken by Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews looking to make amends, I suspect, for race 1, how things shaped up that time out. is doing a good job of that so far. Is up into 9th, obviously. Didn't have an ideal position to start this race on, given how many laps down he was, but so far is really turning things around compared to race 1. We'll have a look at the results of race 1 in a few minutes' time. Just get a picture, just get an idea of what the championship picture looks like after that first race. But for now, there's still plenty of change happening. Rosie Oliver at the moment is under pressure from Matt Day, who's going to head down the inside of the final corner here. It's going to be a drag race once again. The 4C should have the advantage in terms of track position, but in terms of overall straight line performance, there goes that GTV once again. It is fantastic. I mentioned it in race 1. I've mentioned it so many times already this season. But what a great pairing these two cars have turned out to be. Really exhilarating stuff to see people who haven't maybe had the chance to battle so many times before in AROC Racing Leagues history now getting that chance. It's a really exciting setup. I look forward to seeing more like it as we head further into the running of the AROC Racing Leagues. And I say further into it like it hasn't already been going for quite a few years now. 2020, now in our 6th full year. Can you believe it, folks? I was only 18 when it first kicked off. I not long had my first ever Alfa Romeo. In fact, I probably had it for less than 12 months, that's for sure. I was within my first year of driving still. A little 95 horsepower Veloce, which had an appetite for gearboxes. 3 of them I put in that. Waste of money. Complete waste of money. I loved it. It had the red Pedifrau leather, Giulietta Rosso paints of the vibrant kind of orangey red, and it was a Veloce, so it had the correct teledial wheels and the well, it's supposed to be more like horseshoes and teledials. 17-inch alloys with the red brake calipers. That really, when you're 17, that's what you want, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's only got 95 horsepower. Although, to be fair, as a 17-year-old, 95 horsepower, and all your mates had 70 horsepower Fiestas, felt like, well, it was basically a Formula 1 car. Effectively, it had 6 gears, 6 speeds, when there wasn't a hole in the gearbox. Sometimes it had 6 speeds and 95 horsepower. Missed that car. As of this year, only this year did it go off the road, unfortunately. If anyone knows where AGO9 TVD might be, let me know. I would like to buy it. I don't think it's worth very much now. As I say, I think it's in the scrapyard. Andy Craker does eventually get past Rosie Oliver's. Matt Daly did just do a few corners ago. But if anyone does know where that car, I'm just putting it out there for the 7 of you currently watching. I'm sure you're all holding my old Mito hostage. I don't know. We've hit that part of the evening where Reeves starts talking drivel. It seems to happen around about this stage every evening. It's happened once again, folks. And yeah, or if anyone might know the whereabouts of said 2009, definitely no longer with us, Mito Veloce, let me know. I'll buy it back. As if I haven't got enough with the Quadrifoglio and the Twin Air, which is still half primer on one side. Either way, 17.5 minutes. Let's go back to something much more interesting, folks. Let's go back to some racing action, which has been happening in front of you. Luckily, there's a bit of respite from listening to me drone on. Miles Davis is under pressure at the moment. Currently running in 3rd, 10 seconds off the lead of this race. Matt Daly is just behind, less than a car length, as we've just seen Andy Craker going off. Andy Craker, who has seemingly not put a foot wrong at all so far this evening, has one small error there. That's cost him big time as he tumbles down to 8th. Big impact with the wall there as well. Wouldn't be shocked if there was a bit of damage on that car. Daly's in 3rd, under pressure from Miles Davis then, as Daly does eventually get that overtake done. But this could be a great battle between Miles Davis and Matt Daly. We've seen them battling before. I think back to the historic running around about the midpoint of last season, where it was toe-to-toe. This time it looks to be a little bit more settled, but Davis, we do know, can put on fantastic fights for us. Andrew Whitehead's currently in 13th, gets ahead of Andy Webb, who, unfortunately for him, this race doesn't quite look to be an improvement upon race 1, does it now? As Webb is in 14th, Whitehead's in 13th. Let's see, where did Craker rejoin? He rejoined in 10th, so still points on the cards there, and he will, I am sure, make a couple of positions here or there if he can. But what a shame. Otherwise, he's been very much in the mix in this one. Daly's in 3rd then at the moment. Davis running along in 4th. 16 minutes left on the clock, so before I give my sore throat a bit of a rest, why don't we take a look at what the standings are looking like after race 1? Well, that is what I would like to do if it were going to refresh, and it has refreshed, and there has been big change. Currently leading this race, Colin Keefe, headed into this round, leading the standings. That is no longer the case. Of course, Matt Daly now leads us to the tune of 5 points. Does Matt Daly now leads us 63 points to his name, ahead of Colin Keefe in 2nd with 58. Then we have Andrew Whitehead, currently 8th in this race. He's 3rd in the standings with 45 points to his name. Apologies, he's currently 13th in this race. And then we have Andy Craker, currently 4th in the standings now. He gets ahead of Jack Hodson. 4th in the standings, is currently 10th on the road and has 30 points in the championship standings, does Andy Craker. Then we head to John Cole, currently 5th in the standings, 2nd on the road, with 24 points to his name, and that's ahead of Miles Davis, who's currently 4th in this race, but 6th on the road. Apologies, I'm forgetting all my maths, which is not a good thing when you're doing some maths. 6th in the championship standings, 22 points to his name, and 4th on the road at the moment, with a bit of a threat potentially from Rosie Oliver. So let's stay tuned for this battle. Jack Hodson is currently in 6th in this race, is 7th in the standings, as Rosie Oliver has a look down the inside there and sizes up a move on Miles Davis, just not able to quite do it just yet. But Jack Hodson has 21 points to his name in the standings, followed by John Baker, who has 12 points to his name and is 8th in the standings. Anthony doesn't score this evening, not here of course, is currently on 10 points and 9th in the standings. Then we have Rosie Oliver in 10th overall in the championship standings with 8 points. Then that is followed by Andy Webb with 6, Rob Whitney with 6, who's on for some great points actually so far this evening, I must say, followed by Paul Millman on 2 points, and then we have Nathan Mahoney on 1 point, and then we have Stephen Knight, Gary Swarbrick, Andrew Bremer and Alan Matthews yet to score, as Rosie Oliver finds a way past very briefly, finds a way past Miles Davis, not quite able to secure that move off just yet. They actually trade a bit of paint. They go not bumper to bumper, they go door-to-door contact there, as Miles Davis does take just by the skin of his teeth, takes back 4th on the road. That is fantastic stuff. They're getting very close between these two drivers. Seeing reports of a big collision here between Paul Millman, John Baker and Andrew Bremer as well. Andrew Bremer seemed to be the primary loser in all of that one, which is a terrible shame that Bremer tumbles down to 13th. Great to see Andrew on the grid with us, I must say, but we haven't seen too much of him this evening, so hopefully he has a better time out further on into the season. Currently 13th in this one, as I say. Millman's in 10th with the final point scoring position, currently 6th overall out of the GTVs running with us this evening. John Cole leads that GTV class, followed by Miles Davis. Then we have Rosie Oliver on for a GTV podium with Jack Hodson, her sibling, just behind. So a bit of a sibling rivalry now brewing for us, folks. And then we have Rob Whitney in the top 5 in the GTVs. But let's go on board then for this potential sibling rivalry, which is brewing now. 12 minutes on the clock. Let's see how that shapes up. Rosie Oliver goes a little bit deep into the corner there, which might give Jack just a slightly better run. Into 5th goes the nose of Jack Hodson, but has to hang it around the outside, does he? As we now approach 12 minutes left in this one, but eventually does in fact get ahead, gets a great run out of the right-hander there, and that is now going to be 5th for Jack Hodson as he tries to climb back up the championship order once more and is in with a shout of GTV podium here this evening. Andy Webb actually dipping into the pits here. I imagine that might be to serve a penalty, or maybe just to get a bit of practice in this one. Has maybe decided that there's not too much to gain from this race, so has decided to repair the car, put some fresh tyres on, and just see what he can do to get a bit more familiar with the 4C. Certainly seen that in the past, as Alan Matthews is currently in 8th in that vibrant 4C that we were discussing in race 1. And I should add, in terms, speaking of pits and tyres, etc., everyone in this one is on the medium compounder tyre once again, so that is the clear favourite, I think, for Aviano, which is perhaps no surprise, as Jack Hodson now, this might be a bit surprising, is setting his sights on jumping up into fourth and putting pressure on Miles Davis. So we're going to be in for another treat, folks, as we get to see another great battle between two frontrunners in the GTV class. This time out, Miles Davis on the defence, hanging it round the outside there was Jack Hodson. Going to take the camera off automatic there, just to focus back in on this great three-car battle as it's shaping up to be for P4 on the road, because what this battling is doing, it's slowing the top two down and bringing Rosie Oliver right back into contention. So it will in fact be a three-car battle. Jack Hodson does get a nose out in front though. Can he seal the move off? He absolutely can. There we go then. Jack Hodson on a great charge through the field is up into fourth on the road with 10 minutes left on the clock. Miles Davis in fifth and Rosie Oliver just behind in sixth as he tries to hang it round the outside. Does Miles Davis, but Rosie Oliver did that even more, it must be said, and Rosie Oliver settles for sixth at the moment, has a look around the outside once again, but Jack Hodson on a bit of a flyer, it must be said. Colin Knief, meanwhile, out in front, is nearly 10 seconds clear of the next car. It's busy set in purple sectors, but in terms of the GTVs, who is the quickest GTV? And that accolade does go to John Cole at the moment, perhaps unsurprisingly, but Jack Hodson is not too far off, it must be said. So I think he's going to be in with a really good haul of points here, is Jack this evening. Paul Millen has a little bit of an off there, as I think also Andy Craig and Alan Matthews are having a bit of a coming together out on track. So let's see if we can jump on board with that. Paul Millen's race starting to unravel ever so slightly. Andy Craig is up into 8th. Whitehead's into 9th. Haven't heard much from Andrew in this one so far, just because of how it started. And Matthews in 10th there. Millen, as I say, having a bit of a visit off track and dipped into the pits as a result, so will basically forfeit any attempt at points in this race, unfortunately. Which is a shame. He had some really bright moments in race one in particular, but hopefully he can set his sights on the, the next round of the 4C and GTV action, but of course the Julias, which will be making a return to Aviano next week as well. 5 minutes left on the clock then. And someone who I only gave brief mention to earlier on, and I'm going to mention it because it is a really impressive run, Colin Knief, who has been leading this race, believe it or not, folks. He's just been, well, I say leading this race, he's been leading his own race, really. He's 15 seconds clear of anyone else and is looking rather comfortable. Someone who isn't is John Cole, and this is going to be a deja vu for race 1. As here we go, it's Daly versus Cole. Cole on the defence. Daly's trying to hang around the outside, but Cole is using the advantage of that 4Cs power plant to just stay ahead. And there was a tiny bit of a clip between the two cars there as they're trying to find a way past each other. That has spat Matt Daly off, and he loses out to Paul Millman, though, just lapping himself. And that rather settles things for this battle for P2 in the end. Then less than 5 minutes left to go. And so far the podium looks to be pretty settled, at least on the road. Obviously, maybe a little bit more contentious, possibly before the GTVs. In fact, very interesting field spread that we're seeing here for the 4Cs and GTVs. Obviously, we know that the 4Cs got the slight edge in terms of overall pace. But Andy Craig is slightly ruining that for me now, as Robin has had now been overtaken. But in that upper midfield, then it was a complete wall of GTVs. We saw Knief and then Daly being the top two 4Cs in first and third. Then you had to go down to 8th to see another 4C, and it was just a sea of GTVs in the field. Craig is now up into 7th, but still, I think we're seeing a slight midfield advantage, shall we say, to the GTVs, which is very interesting to note. I think that could be a particular talking point at a mixture of tracks. So very interested to see how these cars are going to perform relative to each other as we investigate and explore some other Italian circuits. And in case you're wondering what those Italian circuits might be, well, let me tell you, folks. Obviously, we're at Aviano after Mugello, then we head into Pergusa in a fortnight's time, and a fortnight after that it'll be Imola. And then we get into the even more famous, well, what's more famous, Imola or Monza, really? It's Monza, I've spoiled it now. Imola or Monza, both incredibly famous, of course. Then it's going to be followed by Aldring Park, then Vallelunga, and then rounding out with a final visit to Mugello at the end of the season as well. So plenty of fantastic Italian venues to be visiting. Aviano, Aldring Park, Pergusa. Perhaps the slightly lesser known Vallelunga's relatively well known, but got some big hitters in there as well. The likes of Mugello, likes of particularly Imola and Monza. Great to see such fantastic venues that we do get to visit in the AROC Racing Leagues on our calendars for this season. So I'd be really interested to see how these two cars compare. I imagine this GTV at Monza is going to be one to watch out for. It will be really exciting to see these cars. I think we could put in for some real shock results in our pack here. So looking forward to that one. Apologies for the slight intermission there. That wasn't actually my my body failing me and being ill. That was everything just went black on my screen. Nothing crashed, as I can see. I can see the stream still up and everything's still fine, and I'm still in the session. Just the game decided it didn't really want to show me what was going on anymore, which is not ideal when you're commentating on the race. I must say I have struggled with that. Interesting to note, by the way, that the track temperature has increased by a couple of degrees. Obviously, we start off in optimal conditions and we remain in optimal conditions for our sessions, but just interesting to note that as we progress further into session time here, things are hotting up a little bit. Things were certainly quite hot at multiple points in this race weekend. Things are just at a little bit of a nuance at the moment. unless you're John Cole and Matt Daly, they're going to continue to fight until the very end, I suspect, which is great to see. 30 seconds left on our clock. Now, we will have to take a look at how Knief is doing at some point, as we are now on the penultimate lap of this race. But for the moment, John Cole versus Matt Daly is the fight we want to see. Cole, once again, as he's become well accustomed to already in this GTV, putting up such an almighty defensive drive against that yellow barnstorming 4C that is hunting him down and has done across this race weekend. But John Cole has really used the benefits that GTV does have to his advantage. He's done such a good job of getting absolutely everything out of that car. And likewise, Daly has not allowed the, I imagine, quite formidable straight line performance of that GTV to get the better of him. He's keeping that pressure on and has done such a good job of doing that. What a fantastic bit of driving from these two so far. I'm pleased to say we've got just a little bit more of it left, although I would have liked more. We're already on the final lap of this race. Cole is still defending with everything that he has got. We head round the final corners. These two will now start the final lap of this race. Has John Cole just potentially left a bit of a gap for him there? Well, no, I don't think he will, because that GTV gets onto a straight line and can just break away once again. Cole is safe for at least a mini sector more. But will it be enough? Let's just see. We navigate the left-right kink that starts lap once again. And Cole settles into it quite nicely. 0.2 of a second. Boxed off is Daly. And so far, so good at the start of this lap, but certainly not over yet. As I say, we are keeping very much one eye on what's going on at the front end of the pack. Daly's having a look down the inside. Meanwhile, around the long sweeping left-hander, which turns to the right immediately. Cole is safe for the time being. Knief has just 20 seconds left to take a decisive victory here, folks. What a drive it has been for Colin Knief. What a drive it has been for these two, as well as now we start switching back down the back straight as Daly tries to have a look at a way on Pat. Less than 10 seconds ago, though, we are going to have to take a look at our race leader. What a drive he has had as well. Hats off to you, sir. Colin Knief back and on form. Daly does actually find a way through in the end, but Colin Knief heads and takes our race to victory. Congratulations, Colin. The championship fight continues on, and already it's going to be a close one, isn't it? You can just tell that so early in the season. Daly eventually finds a way past John Cole in the end. Apologies we missed it, folks, but there's just so much great action to be looking at in this race. It's really hard to pick. So we head around that final corner, and then we see Matt Daly is going to be heading on to the start-finish straight, and he does, in fact, take race to podium. I know he said race to victory there, but he doesn't. He takes a podium, and John Cole rounds out the podium on the road and takes the GTV class victory as well. That is an important accolade there. And then we have a bit of a wait. Webb and Millman are classified P13 and 14 respectively. But Jack Hodson now navigates that final corner for a GTV class podium in the end. Great result for Jack Hodson there, and not too far behind at all is going to be Miles Davis, followed by Andy Craker as well. That's your top 6 are on the road settled, followed by Andrew Whitehead, who just at the last moment gets ahead of Rosie Oliver there. Andrew Whitehead bringing it home in 7th, Rosie Oliver in 8th, in the end 4th overall in the GTVs, and completing the top 5 in the GTVs will be Rob Whitney as well, 9th on the road there, and that'll be followed by Alan Matthews, who has a bit of pressure there. There we go, there is Rob Whitney across the line. Alan Matthews under threat from John Baker and Andrew Brammer here, as there we go, top 10 in the end settled. Alan Matthews takes away the final point on offer, followed by John Baker and Andrew Brammer there, completing their run. What a drive, what a race weekend it has been. Haven't seen any Matt Daly victory donuts just yet. We're going to get some Matt Daly victory drifts, I think, to round things out. It is impressive to see a GTV spec car doing drifts like this. They don't really like it with all the downforce and how they are set up, so it's great to see that Matt Daly can eke out those drifts. My, oh my, that was nearly a great one, Matt. But that is going to bring an end to the action for this evening, so I'll let Matt Daly style us out. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating, folks. We'll catch you in a week's time here at Aviano once more, and in a fortnight's time you'll see these 4-season GTVs out at Ennipagusa, as I say, in a fortnight. So thank you very much for watching this evening, folks, and a good night.